So, what if the global energy crisis, the AI boom, and, your own personal burnout aren't actually three completely different problems?
Right. What if they're basically just one single glitch in the exact same operating system?
Exactly. I mean, think about your morning. You sit down with your coffee, you open the news, and you kind of expect boundaries, right?
Yeah, you've got your tech section, your politics section, the environment section.
Right. You read about a massive breakthrough in AI over here, and then a huge strain on the power grid over there. Maybe a global supply chain issue or an article on widespread social exhaustion.
And we are totally conditioned to view every single one of those headlines as completely separate events.
Completely separate. Like, if it's a tech problem, the tech industry will fix it. If it's energy, the energy sector handles it.
But if you actually look at the structural reality,
Yeah.
that's not how it works at all.
Which brings us to today's deep dive, because today our mission is to basically dismantle those neat little boxes. We are looking at why civilization suddenly feels so unstable, overly complex, and just, well, overwhelming to live in.
Yeah, we're unpacking a framework today called the N12 thesis. And it's this analytical model developed by structural analysts to map out why global systems seem to be seizing up all at once.
And the core idea here is fascinating. It's that human civilization is not a collection of separate issues. It's actually a massive, interconnected operating system.
An OS, exactly, where physical realities and cognitive loops are literally stacked on top of each other.
Okay, so I want to make sure I really understand this OS concept because, civilization as an operating system sounds a little abstract.
Sure.
We need to map out the actual architecture here to see how, like, a tech headline causes an environmental crisis. The source material calls this the stack.
Right, the stack. So think of it as a multi-layered structure. You move from the physical foundation up to the abstract. At the very base, you have the planet. And resting directly on top of the planet is energy. Then, above energy, sits infrastructure.
Okay, so like the physical grid, the cables, all that.
Exactly. And then comes AI. Above AI is the state, so governments and policy.
Got it.
And resting on the state is the care layer. That's, families, communities, healthcare. And finally, encompassing all of this is civilization.
So it's planet, energy, infrastructure, AI, state, care, civilization. 7 layers.
7 layers. But just listing them doesn't really explain the instability we're feeling right now.
Right, because how does that explain why everything feels so crazy?
Well, the instability comes from the fact that a change in one layer, it just cannot be contained. Because they're structurally linked, a shift in layer 4 instantly pushes physical and economic pressure into the other layers.
Can we trace a specific example of that, like an actual causal chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are currently seeing this massive surge in AI development.
Right, huge boom.
But AI isn't magic. It requires immense amounts of physical electricity to run the data centers. So that AI expansion instantly increases the load on the power grid.
Which pushes downward pressure into the energy layer.
Exactly. And the energy layer has physical limits. It relies on the infrastructure layer, the transformers, copper wiring, cooling systems.
And when that infrastructure gets pushed to the absolute breaking point, someone has to step in to stop the total blackout.
Which forces the state layer to act. Suddenly, governments have to jump in with emergency regulations or subsidies or national security mandates to build new power plants.
I mean, it's like a smartphone overheating, right?
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You let a massive new software program, AI, and it just drains the battery, which is the energy layer. Then the phone gets hot, the internal fan starts whirring. That's the infrastructure layer stressing out. And then it ultimately stresses out the user, the care layer, who needs the phone to actually do their job. Are we basically just experiencing a global hardware overheating issue?
That is essentially exactly what's happening. And to trace the money on that, if the state is suddenly funneling billions into energy infrastructure just to keep the OS running, that capital gets pulled from somewhere else.
From local economies or social safety nets.
Right. So the cost of living goes up.
Yeah.
And that pressure ultimately lands on everyday people just trying to navigate their lives.
Taking the hit right in the care layer.
Exactly. One event at the tech level cascades all the way down and creates massive social instability.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Isn't AI still just, a tool? I mean, I type a prompt, it gives me an email or generates a picture. It feels like a really fast calculator. How is a piece of software considered infrastructure in the same way that a highway is?
It's a common misconception,
Yeah.
honestly, because we interact with it through a screen. It feels weightless.
Right, it's just in the cloud.
But the cloud is heavy. AI is no longer just software sitting on a hard drive. It relies on Sprawling semiconductor facilities, gigawatts of power, millions of gallons of water for cooling.
So it's physically embedding itself into the Earth.
Literally, it is
Yeah.
actively becoming the physical infrastructure of civilization itself.
Wow. Okay, so the physical footprint is massive. But even so, it's still just processing data, isn't it?
Well, no, it goes way deeper than data processing.
Yeah.
To understand the shift, we have to look at what the N12 thesis calls the civilization loop.
The civilization loop, what is that?
It's basically the cognitive cycle that drives human progress. The sequence goes like this: reality, observation, interpretation, decision, execution.
Okay, so reality happens, we observe it, figure out what it means, make a decision, and do something about it.
Historically, yes, humans were the sole operators of that entire loop.
We were the ones doing all the observing and interpreting.
Right, but now AI is actively participating inside that loop. It curates the news you see, which alters your observation.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Algorithmic trading systems interpret market movements and make decisions faster than a human ever could. AI interprets medical scans. It isn't just calculating, it's actively altering how civilization observes and interprets reality.
So human cognition isn't the only driver anymore.
Exactly.
But if our physical infrastructure and our cognitive processing are now being, like, co-piloted by AI, and the whole tech industry just wants to make everything run faster and faster, what happens when a massive system like this tries to accelerate?
You run into the friction of density. People constantly say the world is getting too complicated, but the N12 framework argues that complexity is actually the wrong word entirely.
What's the right word then?
Interconnection density. Everything is wired to everything else more tightly than ever before.
Oh, I see. So it's not that there are more moving parts, it's that the parts are packed so closely together that they can't even move without rubbing against each other.
And that friction creates what the thesis calls gradients.
Gradients, like a pressure differential.
Exactly like that. We have to stop looking at isolated events and start looking at gradients. So if AI compute demand skyrockets, but global energy supply plateaus, you don't have two separate news stories. You have an AI energy gradient.
A massive buildup of pressure.
Right, like water desperately trying to flow from high pressure to low pressure.
Okay, so let's break down the actual mechanism there. Tech companies need more power. What happens on the ground?
Capital moves, trillions flow into securing energy. Tech companies buy up local power grids, energy prices in that region spike, and local manufacturing suddenly can't afford electricity.
So they shut down. Jobs are lost.
And then the state tries to intervene with bailouts, which spikes inflation. It's a structural bottleneck, reshaping the physical world.
And because of that density you mentioned, there's nowhere for the pressure to safely go, which kind of brings up this dangerous relationship between optimization and resilience.
Yes, the secondary gradient.
Yeah.
As system optimization goes up, our physical buffers go down.
Because we've essentially optimized away all our shock absorbers to maximize profits.
Precisely. Look at global supply chains. A few years ago, logistics became a perfectly optimized just-in-time model.
Right. Nobody wanted to pay for extra warehouse space to store backup inventory.
It saved billions. But the second a ship got stuck in the Suez Canal or a pandemic hit, the entire global network just seized up.
Because the buffer was gone. So when a system is perfectly optimized to be efficient, it actually just means a minor hiccup in layer 3 causes an earthquake in layer 6.
Because there's no slack left in the rope.
And if all those physical buffers are gone, where does all this structural pressure finally land? Gravity has to pull it down to a physical endpoint, right?
It lands on the care layer.
The humans at the bottom of the stack.
Exactly. The care layer sits right between the state and civilization. Healthcare, education, families. Its whole function is the daily recovery of human life. It's our biological foundation.
But there's a huge mismatch there, right? Because AI, global logistics, they operate at the speed of light. They don't need to sleep.
No, they don't.
But we are slow biological systems. We need downtime to heal, raise kids, maintain relationships.
And the thesis explicitly states that high AI synchronization lowers human recovery capacity. The fast-moving tech civilization and our slow-moving biological recovery systems are drifting apart.
Is this why everyone just feels this profound sense of social exhaustion right now?
Absolutely.
Like we're being forced to constantly respond to an OS that literally never disconnects. We are the exhausted buffer. We're taking all the hits because the system optimized everything else away.
You nailed it. And when human resilience is the only buffer left, the social fabric starts to fray.
So if the system is this interconnected and it's moving so fast that it's burning us out,
Hmm.
we have to ask who is actually at the steering wheel.
Well, that requires a huge cognitive shift.
Yeah.
Because for centuries, we assumed someone was in control. A king, a government, the free market.
Right. We thought there was an adult in the room with the blueprints.
Exactly. But humans are starting to realize that maybe no one actually understands the whole system anymore. We're transitioning from beings who operate the OS to beings who are just responding to pressures inside the OS.
Wait, really? So no one is in charge. The government isn't controlling it. The tech CEOs aren't controlling it. We're all just reacting to pressure gradients like water flowing down a hill.
Pretty much. Which means understanding civilization isn't about memorizing facts anymore. It requires what the source calls structural connection ability.
Structural connection ability. So taking a step back and watching the whole board instead of staring at one chess piece.
Right. When you see a headline about a power grid failing, you should automatically connect it to the AI layer, then state policy, and anticipate the impact on the human care layer. You ask, how is the pressure moving?
I mean, that realization that we are inside the system just reacting to pressures, that's going to feel incredibly unsettling for a lot of people.
It can be, yeah, but it also gives you incredible clarity. Because once you stop expecting one politician or one tech breakthrough to magically fix everything, you can start asking a better question.
Which is, how do we prevent the OS from collapsing under its own density? How do we find stability when pressure is always spiking?
The key concept here is phase fluidity. In a dense, high-pressure system, trying to remain fixed and rigid is the most dangerous thing you can do. Rigidity causes systems to snap.
Okay, I want to visualize this phase fluidity. It's kind of like a modern cloud computing network, right?
How so?
Well, when a massive spike in web traffic hits, the system doesn't rigidly try to take the blow on one server. It dynamically spins up new servers, shifts the load, and temporarily scales down background tasks. It fundamentally changes its phase to handle the pressure without crashing.
That is a perfect comparison. It dynamically shifts state and recovers. But a cloud network can only do that if it has unoptimized spare servers waiting in the wings.
Ah, so we have to deliberately rebuild the buffers we optimized away.
We have to put the slack back into the rope, especially in the care layer. So when the pressure inevitably spikes, the human foundation actually has the biological space to absorb the shock without breaking.
Right. Stability isn't about standing still against the wave. It's about being flexible enough to navigate it.
Precisely.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a ton of ground today. We completely remapped how we look at society, moving from isolated news events to seeing the civilization OS stack.
Right, from planet and energy, up through infrastructure, AI, the state, and the care layer.
And we saw how AI is physically inserting itself into our world and our cognitive loops, how optimization deleted our shock absorbers, creating massive pressure gradients.
And how that inadvertently crushes the slow-moving human systems at the bottom, causing that widespread burnout we all feel.
Exactly. And finally, that cognitive shift, the realization that true resilience requires phase fluidity, not rigid control over a system that's outgrown human comprehension.
It's a completely different way to look at the future.
It really is. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We started this deep dive talking about feeling overwhelmed by chaotic headlines. It is so easy to look at energy shortages, tech disruptions, and societal burnout and just conclude that the world is falling apart.
Yeah, that's the natural instinct.
But what if we take this N12 thesis to its ultimate conclusion? If we are simply living inside a giant, interconnected operating system responding to new pressures, maybe the feeling that the world is collapsing is just an illusion. Perhaps it's not collapsing at all. Perhaps it's just finally becoming connected. Tomorrow morning, when you look at the news, don't look at it as a list of random events. Look at it as a map of pressures flowing through the civilization OS. Ask yourself, where is the pressure building today and where is it going to flow tomorrow? Tomorrow morning, when you look at the news, don't look at it as a list of random events. Look at it as a map of pressures flowing through the civilization OS. Ask yourself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Catch you next time.